This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, I am going to show you how we can consume a JSON based REST service from Mule ESB. For that, I have taken a use case that we are going to develop a REST API that will allow HRs to insert a new employee into HR system. At the same time, the same record should be inserted into finance system too to create the payroll for the employee. So whenever a new employee onboarded, that means joining into a organization, HR will call this service by sending this specific XML payload, and the record will be inserted to the database. At the same time, we are going to consume one REST service internally, which is provided by finance team to make integration with finance team by sending this JSON payload. Okay, so I would like to show you how the existing REST service is working. If you see in 10th session, I discussed about this service and I deployed the same to Cloud Hub. That's why I was able to consume today. So if I click on send, it will insert this record into finance system and will respond back status 200 message as success. Okay, so we are going to consume the same service from our service. To do that, go to studio. Before that, I would like to show you I have created a table in my SQL database and inserted a few records. And if you see, I have these many records, only two. Now I am going to insert a couple of records. Let's get started. By the way, in previous sessions, I used Oracle database. From now, I am going to use MySQL. I just would like to show you how to work with both Oracle and MySQL too. Create a new project. Name it as EMP PAPI. Finish. As we know how we can develop a REST service, go to HTTP module, drag and drop listener for that, and create the connector configuration. I would like to have same HTTP and port as 8081. Okay, and we decided to have the service path as onboard create-employee. Let's have the same as path. Then, as usual, go for logger and just make a entry log saying that started the flow. And we can just print the payload in the start log. Next, I am going to have database insert call to insert the data into HR system first, which is a database integration. And go here. MySQL is running in local system, so I can go for MySQL connection, and as it is running in my local system, the host would be localhost, and port will be 3306, the default port. I have user as root and password. We have to include a MySQL JDBC driver. For this, you can directly Google it and add the jar. Okay, I have already downloaded that. So MySQL connector Java, you can go for 5.1.46 jar. Click on OK. We can just test the connection, whether it is able to connect or not. Yeah, the connection was successful. Click on OK. Now I am going to write the insert query to insert the record into EMP master table. Okay, I have already written the insert query. I'm just copy pasting rather than hard coded values. I am going to inject dynamically. Let me maximize it and paste here. In place of these values, I would like to have the dynamic values. To do that, we know already we can go for named parameters by using the same column names. That will make us better understanding about the mapping with respect to database columns and also the mapping, the request payload we are getting. Okay, now actually it should be schema name dot. My schema is onboard. Let me cross check. Yes, save side. Let me copy paste to avoid any errors. Let me remove semicolon, which will not allow us. And to prepare the input payloads, we know, right? So we just need to get the named parameter, and corresponding mapping would be from our request. Actually, we are going to send a XML payload. I have already prepared .xml file for that, and we are going to have employee dot what ID. So it should be payload dot employee dot ID. And next we are going to have emp name, and for that mapping we will have payload dot employee dot and should be name, and I'm going to have emp underscore status, which is a named parameter, and mapping should be payload dot employee dot status. And last field I'm going to have emp underscore address and payload dot employee dot address. Save it. So this will make a record into HR system. Next, we are going to consume a REST service which is already deployed and running in the Cloud Hub. So to consume that, I have to go for HTTP and go for request, not listener. Drag and drop the request. So before this, what we should do actually, we have to prepare the expected JSON payload. To do that, either we can do directly here under payload section, or we can do before that by keeping a transform message. Because why I was making the transformation, the input I am getting is XML payload, right? And the service was expecting a JSON payload, and also that is not required all these fields, that only needed ID, name, status, address not required, because it was expecting employee ID, employee name, status. So we have to prepare the same payload. What I have done, actually this is the input that we are going to get, and this is the output actually that was expected by the REST service. And as we discussed previously, the payload is stateless in Mule ESB. Once I make the record insertion into the database, next the payload will contain affected rows and generated keys. It will not contain the actual payload. To do that, we just need to create a variable, and I am going to create as emp payload. In that, I am going to inject the payload so that I can use this variable anywhere, that is emp payload. Okay, to prepare the required JSON object, what we have to do, usually we go for the define metadata to have inbound meta section. Let me take as input metadata, create type as we know, which is of XML, and select example. I have already, time being, I have already created and saved on the desktop. This is emp input. This is straight and forward. Just get the XML into a file and save it as a .xml, and just load the same thing. And in similar way, I have prepared the required JSON payload and saved it in a .json file. Select it. Now automatically our left side metadata will be populated. Once it's done, we are going to prepare the right side metadata, nothing but outbound metadata. To do that, write it here, set metadata, create one more type, output metadata, and which is of JSON. I have example already saved on the desktop, and just browse the EMP output. Select. Now outbound metadata will be populated. We just need to map the inbound to outbound meta section so that we will get the required payload. But if you see, when I was dragging and dropping, it was coming from the payload dot. But what our payload contains now, after making the insert into the database, it contains the number of records get affected into the database as payload, like the value as 1. But we need payload, right? What I have done, I have just injected that into a variable. So to do that, here we have to go for vars dot. In Mule, we use vars to read the variable back. So it should be vars dot. In similar way, in place of payload, I have to keep vars dot emp payload, because always in Mule ESB our payload is stateless. Once you do any integration with any other system, you will have the payload as outcome of the system. You will not have the initial payload after making any integration with any system. In similar way, after consuming this service, I am going to get this response, right? So the payload will contain this response. So that is the reason we need to set into a variable, and we can use that in the future. Save. Now I am going to the request. Go here, and we need to get the host. I already have the details of service. Just copy this host. The port for HTTP is by default 80. Click on OK. Now I am going to have path here. The path is this, and actually which is of a post service. For that, I have to choose the method as post, and I am injecting the payload. The payload actually here we are preparing. Or you can directly have this piece of logic directly here if you want. Anything would be fine. Save it. Now we are done. Let me run this in debugging mode.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, the service got deployed. Now I am going to make request for this service, which will insert a record into database, and it will consume another service internally by passing the JSON payload. I have already prepared the request. Not yet. Let me go for post and HTTP. I have already created all the details needed. Just copy paste. Then go to body, select raw. Under this we are going to the XML. Just get this XML payload, send. Request came, and the payload we got was the actual payload that I sent. Click on next. So it has printed the received payload, and we are setting that into a variable. Next. Click on next. So we can see the record get inserted or not. Actually we have two records. If I do a select star, now the third record got inserted. Now click on next. Now we can see the payload has changed to the JSON as employee ID, employee name, status, and click on next. So the call has sent to another REST service. That means we are able to consume, and whatever the response we are getting from here, that resides under the payload. In Mule ESB, usually whatever you have in the payload at end of the flow, that will be responded back. You can see the same response here as status 200 success. That's all for this session. In coming session, I am going to show you how to consume XML based REST service. Thank you.